In the old days, long before the rise of the great kingdoms, there lived a noble family in the peaceful lands of Karembi, an ancient African homeland surrounded by fertile plains and endless farmlands. From this house came a single child, Ayanil, the only daughter of her parents and the heartbeat of their lineage. Her birth was celebrated across the land, but it came with a silent price. After her mother delivered her, the midwives announced that the woman would never be able to conceive again. So Ayanil became the child of a closed womb, treasured beyond measure, loved fiercely, and raised with a devotion that bordered on worship. She grew into a gentle, obedient girl, humble despite her noble roots. Her parents owned some of the largest farmlands in Karembi, stretching so wide that one could walk from sunrise till dusk and still not reach the end. Their harvests fed the kingdom, and their name carried respect. But fate, as it often does, changed without warning. When Ayanil entered her teenage years, tragedy struck the family in a way no one had imagined. One quiet morning, a strange black oil burst from the ground near their largest farmland, close to the great river of Karembi. At first, the workers thought it was ordinary mud, but soon the thick, dark liquid spread rapidly, poisoning the soil and destroying their crops. The land withered, the harvest died, and the family's wealth collapsed like a broken calabash. The loss was so great that the once prosperous household fell into deep struggle. In desperation, Ayanil's father went to his elder brother, her uncle, to beg for help. The uncle agreed to give them a spare piece of farmland, but not without a condition that shocked everyone. Ayanil must come and live in his house as a helper, serving the family in all domestic work. Her mother protested with tears, refusing to give up her only child. But in the ancient customs of the land, the father's word was final, and he, blinded by desperation and shame, accepted the condition. Ayanil's fate was sealed. She left her parents' home and traveled far to live with her uncle, not as a beloved niece, but as a servant in a house where she once visited as family. She carried her sorrow quietly, because she understood that refusing would only bring more hardship to her parents. As she stepped into her uncle's compound in Karembi, she felt the weight of destiny pressing on her shoulders, unaware that this painful journey was the path that would awaken the extraordinary power buried deep inside her.
Life in the house of her uncle Bantari was nothing close to the protection and love Ayanil expected. From her first week there, she realized she had not been brought as a family member. She had been brought as someone whose suffering no one cared about. Even though she was still a teenager, Bantari and his wife Nyara gave her the tasks of grown adults, heavy chores from sunrise until nightfall. If she didn't perform the work exactly the way they wanted, she faced harsh punishments. She endured it quietly, believing her silence would keep peace between her parents and her uncle's family. Bantari's 3 children, Kendu, Rago, and Miri, treated her even worse. They did not see her as their cousin. They saw her as someone beneath them, someone who could take the blame for anything they did. If anything went wrong in the house, they would point fingers at her, and she would face the consequences. Some days, Bantari would restrain her and administer punishments that left her physically and emotionally drained. She cried often, but only when she was alone. And each time, she whispered to herself that maybe tomorrow would be better. Whenever her parents came to visit, Bantari covered everything with fake smiles. He welcomed them warmly, spoke kindly, and claimed she was being treated like a daughter. Ayanil was never given a chance to speak alone with her parents. Bantari always stood nearby, watching. Her parents left every visit believing their daughter was safe. As long as she remained in Bantari's house, rest did not exist for her. Years passed. Ayanil grew from a young girl into a young woman, but the cruelty only deepened. There was no childhood left in her, only exhaustion and quiet endurance. One evening, after finishing an endless list of chores, Ayanil collapsed on her mat and fell into a deep, exhausted sleep. Her muscles felt heavy, her mind was foggy, and for the first time in many days she slept deeply. But in the middle of the night, she felt a warm hand on her arm. Still half asleep, she opened her eyes slowly, and what she saw jolted her fully awake. Kendu, her uncle's first son, was leaning over her in the darkness. Fear shot through her. Startled and frightened, she pushed him away with sudden force. Kendu stumbled backward in the dark, lost his footing, and fell clumsily to the ground. A sharp cry escaped him as he hit the floor. Panic gripped Ayanle's chest. She knew exactly what would happen if she stayed. She knew her uncle would never believe her side of the story. She knew Kenda and his siblings would twist the truth. She knew the blame would be hers, again. Terrified, she ran. She fled into the nearby bushes, guided only by moonlight and instinct. Going back inside to explain would be a terrible mistake. She understood that better than anyone. So she made a desperate choice. She decided to run home. Home, where love still existed. Home, where she hoped she could finally breathe. The journey was long. She had no food, no water, nothing but fear pushing her forward. By the time she reached her parents' doorstep, she was weak with hunger and trembling with exhaustion. Her mother pulled her close immediately, and Ayanle told them everything, every detail, every fear, every moment. She saw guilt fill her father's eyes. She saw pain swallow her mother's heart. They regretted the bargain they had made, a bargain she never agreed to. At sunrise, Bantari arrived at their compound with his son Kendu, who leaned on him dramatically. The moment Ayanle saw them, her heart sank with dread. A family meeting was called. Kendu spoke first, but his story was twisted completely. He painted himself as the victim. He accused her of attacking him without reason. His siblings supported every lie. Ayanle tried to defend herself, but her father stood trapped in an impossible position. If he opposed Bantari, the land his family depended on would be taken away. One wrong word would plunge them into ruin again. Then Bantari demanded something even more painful. "Punish your daughter in front of us, or I take back my land." It was a command wrapped in cruelty. Her father's heart shattered, but he agreed. For the first time in her life, he raised a hand against her. His voice shook. Her cries filled the compound. Her mother burst into tears and fled, unable to bear the sight. Bantari and Kendu watched with satisfaction. When the painful moment ended, Bantari seized Ayanle and pulled her close to his side. "We are going home," he said coldly. And just like that, they dragged her back toward the place she now feared more than anything. The house she had come to know as hell. She had no idea that fate was already turning. Her suffering was leading her to a power that would change Karembi forever.
The inhuman treatment in Bantari's household only continued to grow worse. No day brought relief. No night brought peace. One evening, as the sun was setting behind the trees of Karembi, Ayanle went to the village river to fetch water for the household. She carried a large calabash on her head, heavy and full to the brim, and began the long walk back home. The path was narrow, filled with hidden roots and uneven ground. Halfway through the journey, her foot caught on an unseen tree root. She stumbled forward and fell. The calabash shattered on the ground, and the water spilled into the dust. Her heart dropped. She knew she was in great trouble. Gathering the broken pieces, she returned home, trembling. When she arrived, her Aunt Nyaru became furious. Ayanle immediately knelt and begged, explaining it was an accident. A friend of Nyaru who had come to visit pleaded on Ayanle's behalf. Nyaru pretended to calm down, but deep inside, she wasn't finished with her. In the middle of the night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Nyaru woke Ayanle abruptly. She ordered her to go back to the river that same night and fetch another calabash of water. Ayanle begged her for mercy, explaining how dark and dangerous the path was, but her aunt refused. Nyaru gave her only two choices: fetch the water tonight, or leave my house and go back to your parents. And Ayanle knew exactly what that threat meant. If she returned home, her parents would lose the land they were surviving on. She had no choice, so she quietly picked up another calabash and stepped out into the darkness. The night was deep and moonlit. The trees whispered with the wind. She walked slowly, clutching the calabash, fear tightening around her chest. As she moved along the forest path leading to the river, she began to hear strange whispers. Soft, unclear, like voices carried by the wind. She also sensed movement, shadows shifting among the trees, faint shapes that seemed to watch her from a distance. A cold shiver crawled up her spine, but she could not turn back. Her fear of Nyaru's punishment was stronger than the fear of whatever watched her in the forest. She walked faster. When she finally reached the river, she bent beside the water and dipped the calabash. As it filled, she noticed a shape out of the corner of her eye. Slowly, she turned her head, and what she saw terrified her. A mermaid rested on the river's surface, her figure half-human, half-waterborne, surrounded by faint glowing lights that looked like floating candles on the river. Ainless' entire body froze. Goosebumps shot across her skin. Her heart hammered wildly. In blind panic, she dropped the calabash and ran. She ran as fast as she could along the familiar path, not daring to look back. She didn't stop until she had put a great distance between herself and the river. Breathing hard, she suddenly remembered she had left the calabash behind, and she knew Nyaru would punish her far worse for returning without water. Between the terror at the river and the terror at home, she feared her aunt more, so she gathered every bit of courage she had and began walking back toward the river. When she reached close enough to see the water again, she hid behind a tree to observe. She hoped it had all been her imagination, but it wasn't. The mermaid was still there, in the same position, calm, waiting. Ainless' heart pounded loudly in her ears as she crouched in silence. Then something happened that made her freeze completely. From the river, the mermaid called her name. Her voice was calm, carrying warmth Ainl had never felt in Bantari's household. She called out gently, "Do not be afraid. I mean you no harm. I am not like your aunt." Ainless' fear remained, but deep inside her, she felt something else, a strange sense of safety, a feeling that the voice genuinely cared for her. Slowly, with trembling steps, she came out from her hiding place and approached the water. The mermaid looked at her with calm, glowing eyes. "Your suffering has not gone unnoticed," she said softly. "Fate led you here tonight." Before Ainl, the mermaid presented two large calabashes. One was sealed tightly, the other was open, filled with gold, treasures, and rare stones that glittered beneath the moonlight. The mermaid explained, "You may choose only one." Ainl stepped closer, unsure which to reach for. But before she touched anything, the mermaid raised her hand. "Wait," her voice echoed across the water. "There is something you must know." She pointed to the calabash overflowing with treasures. "This one is free, comes with no conditions. You may take it and leave. Wealth, gold, and stones, all yours instantly." Then she gestured toward the sealed calabash. "But this calabash holds the life you wished for. Freedom, strength beyond human limits, a destiny greater than anything you have ever imagined. Your true future." Ainless' heart thumped. "But it comes with a price," the mermaid continued. "To take this calabash, you must serve in my underwater realm for 10 years, with a clean heart, as faithfully as you serve in your aunt's house, but without cruelty, without suffering, and without fear." It was a difficult choice. One path offered instant riches. The other offered a destiny beyond anything she ever dreamed, but demanded sacrifice. Ainl closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and made her decision. She reached for the mystery calabash. The mermaid smiled gently. "Then your true journey begins." She reached out and touched Ainless' hand. And in that moment, the water rose around them, carrying both of them deep into the realm beneath the river, a place where no human had ever walked. Her life in Karembi ended there. Her destiny as something far greater had just begun.
In the underwater realm, everything around her was unlike anything the human world had ever known. The waters glowed softly, illuminated by living lights that moved freely like drifting spirits. Strange and magnificent aquatic beings swam around her, creatures unlike fish or humans, shaped by ancient powers that lived far beneath the earth's surface. The entire realm felt more advanced, more structured, and more beautiful than anything she ever saw in Kerembi Kingdom. The water currents carried harmony, and every corner of the realm pulsed with life and peace. The mermaid who brought her into this world cared for her deeply. She tended to her needs, taught her about the underwater realm, and showed her a level of kindness that Ayel had never experienced in her uncle's house. The mermaid also had her own family, a husband and children, and they welcomed her with warmth. They treated her like someone who belonged with them, not like a servant or an outcast. For the first time since childhood, she felt the warmth of a true home. With each passing day, she laughed more, worked with joy, and moved freely without fear of punishment or humiliation. The love she received in the underwater world slowly overshadowed the pain she once knew. The realm became her refuge. It reached a point where she forgot the cruelty of her uncle's home and the sorrow she endured. She even forgot the land she once came from, as the peace of this new world covered the wounds in her spirit. But time in the underwater world flowed differently. It moved far faster than in the human realm. When the 10 years she promised the mermaid finally reached its end, the mermaid gently reminded her. She explained that her parents had suffered grievously and that they needed her more than she knew. She informed her that although the underwater realm had given her peace, the human realm still held her destiny. Meanwhile, back in Kerembi, the years had been very cruel to her parents. When she disappeared, her uncle's family made no attempt to search for her. Instead, they returned home telling her parents a twisted story, claiming their daughter ran away from their house without reason. But her father knew his brother too well. He understood that something dark must have happened because if she truly ran away, she would have returned home. The disappearance of their only child sparked a great conflict between the brothers. Her father, consumed by guilt and anger, no longer cared about the land bargain that had enslaved their daughter. He returned the land to his brother in rage, rejecting the shackles that bound them. With the land gone and his daughter nowhere to be found, he was left broken. The mother suffered deeply too, her days filled with grief and sleepless nights. After years of searching and returning empty-handed, they eventually accepted the painful belief that their daughter might be gone forever. Regret ate the father from the inside out, haunting him with the knowledge that she suffered because of a choice he made. 10 years passed in the human realm. It was finally time for her to return. The mermaid, filled with compassion for the girl she had come to love, gifted her the same 2 calabashes she had offered her on the night of their first encounter. She reminded her that she now possessed everything any human on earth could hope for. The mermaid then instructed her to unseal the mystery calabash she had chosen 10 years ago. When the calabash opened, it contained nothing except clear water. The mermaid told her to drink every drop of it, assuring her that the water was the essence of the gifts she had earned through service and loyalty. She drank the water to the last drop. Immediately, the entire underwater realm vanished into a blinding flash. Her body went weightless. Her mind drifted into nothingness. She passed out. When she regained consciousness, she opened her eyes to find herself lying on the same river shore where she first encountered the mermaid a decade earlier. The treasure calabash lay beside her, untouched and filled with gold, rare stones, and wealth beyond imagination. She picked it up and stood to her feet. As she began to run, she felt an overwhelming surge of power in her veins. Her muscles moved with strength she had never known. Her speed was far greater than any human's, so fast that the ground seemed to shift behind her. When her foot accidentally struck a tree root, she did not fall. Her body lifted lightly into the air and floated forward before landing gracefully, still running with the treasure calabash in hand. It was at that moment she realized the true depth of the gifts the mermaid had blessed her with. That same evening, after 10 long years in the underwater realm, she reached her home. Her parents were seated on a wooden bench in front of their house, burdened by sorrow and age. When they looked up and saw her approaching, they froze in disbelief. The next moment, they broke into tears. They ran toward her, embracing her tightly, overcome with joy as they held the daughter they thought they had lost forever. Their cries filled the evening air, cries not of pain, but of relief, love, and gratitude. Their lost child had finally returned home. When the joy of reunion settled, Ayanl sat with her parents and revealed everything she had endured. She explained how she was forced to go to the river in the middle of the night, how fear chased her into the darkness, and how her encounter with the mermaid changed her destiny forever. As they listened, her parents noticed something even stranger. After 10 years of disappearance, her face and body had not aged at all. She looked exactly the same as the day she went missing. Though her parents struggled to believe what she told them about the underwater realm, their doubts vanished the moment she opened the treasure calabash. The gold, rare stones, and shining wealth inside left them speechless. Their eyes widened with disbelief as they realized that everything their daughter had said was true. The miracle standing before them was not just her return, but the immeasurable blessings she brought with her. With the wealth from the treasure calabash, Ayanl immediately restored her family's life. She purchased far more land than her family had ever owned, reclaiming their dignity and rebuilding their legacy from the ground up. The great farmlands they once lost were now overshadowed by even greater fields under their control. But Ayanl's heart did not seek only to uplift her family. She remembered how the laborers and servants across the kingdom suffered under their masters, just as she once did under her uncle's roof. She knew the hardships they endured, the humiliation they swallowed, and the fear they lived with daily. Driven by purpose, she visited the workers on her uncle's land and offered them something unimaginable: twice the pay he gave them, fair treatment, and dignity. They accepted her offer without hesitation, abandoning her uncle's farmland in unity. This act enraged her uncle, who watched helplessly as his labor force vanished overnight. But Ayanl did not stop there. She moved through Karembi Kingdom, targeting every heartless noble family known for mistreating their workers. She offered their servants and laborers a better life, better pay, and better treatment. The noble families who abused their power watched her strip away their workforce one by one. For the first time, the kingdom's power structure shifted. Those who treated their workers with respect were spared and continued in peace, but those who ruled with cruelty felt their strength crumble in her presence. Her mission was simple: every human deserved to be treated like a human, not like an animal. As her influence grew, so did her wealth. Everything she touched flourished. Every venture she started prospered. Every farmland she opened blossomed beyond expectation. It was as though her very footsteps carried blessings. Slowly, the people of Karembi Kingdom began to change. They learned that treating their workers well was no longer just kindness, it was survival. No one wanted to lose their entire labor force to her. Yet, while the poor rejoiced in her goodness, something darker grew beneath the surface. Not everyone celebrated her rise. The nobles who lost their power, wealth, and workers resented her deeply. Hatred began to spread among those whose authority her actions threatened. The more she lifted others, the more enemies she unknowingly made. One evening, as Ayanl made her way back home, a group of heavily built men emerged from the shadows and ambushed her. They launched their spears and swords at her with deadly intent. But the moment the weapons touched her skin, they shattered into pieces. The men froze in shock as fear crept into their hearts. Before they could understand what she truly was, a wave of invisible force burst from her, striking them with a power beyond anything human. The attackers stumbled back, terrified as they realized they had confronted someone extraordinary, someone beyond their reach. They fled into the night, running back to whoever had sent them, carrying with them a story that would shake the kingdom. Rumors spread like wildfire. The tale of the men who attacked her, and survived only because she allowed them to live, echoed through every village and every household. One of the attackers confessed their encounter, describing her strength, her unbreakable skin, and the mysterious force that defeated them effortlessly. Her legend grew even stronger. Loved by the poor, feared by the rich, and respected by all who heard her story, Ayanl became a symbol of hope. She continued freeing the oppressed, protecting the weak, and challenging every injustice that stained the kingdom. Her name became a force. Her presence became a warning. And her story marked the rise of a young woman who reshaped Karembe Kingdom forever.
From the ancient kingdom of Karembe, the legend of Ayanl rose like a hidden flame. She was once an ordinary girl, mistreated, oppressed, and pushed beyond the limits of human suffering. But her encounter with the mysterious underwater realm transformed her fate forever. She returned with strength no weapon could pierce, speed no human could match, and a heart powerful enough to challenge an entire society. She lifted the poor from bondage, humbled the cruel nobles, rebuilt her family's legacy, and became a silent guardian whose power protected the helpless. Her feats spread through villages like wildfire. Stories of a young woman who moved faster than the wind, whose body could not be harmed, and whose presence brought prosperity wherever she walked. Generations later, these stories traveled far beyond Africa and were retold, reshaped, and recreated by different cultures. Over time, the image of the invincible African girl with extraordinary abilities transformed into new names and new versions, until the world eventually called her Supergirl. But in Karembe, the people still tell a different truth. They say the real Supergirl was not from the skies, but from their land. A girl named Ayanl, born human, forged by suffering, empowered by destiny. The forgotten African legend whose story inspired the myth the world knows today.